Hello and welcome back to the Newdig Norfolk Gardener. We've made it to April, so it's only right that we should give you our top tips for the veg garden for the month of April. I do hope you had a wonderful Easter break. We certainly did. But those grandchildren of ours, you know, they think they're a bit cleverer than Nanny and Grandad. But as I look about, I can see they've missed all these treasures down here, Mrs. W.
Yeah, they didn't catch these ones from the Easter Bunny, did they? There's even a lollipop buried in the strawberries there somewhere.
Even Mr. B, look,
I know,
is
he's
thinking
buzzing around,
that
isn't he?
perhaps I could have something extra to eat. I've even missed one up here, look, Mrs. W, up the Easter Bunny left.
Oh, yes.
She did rather make things rather more challenging for them this year.
They're not quite as tall as you.
You know, April is probably one of myself and Mrs. W's most favourite month. Yes, there is plenty to do. There's still things to sow, there's still jobs to do. But we see days like this, where we get sunshine and the temperatures feel so much warmer. It really does feel as though spring is here. And I know spring sprung upon us right at the very end of March, but it didn't really feel like it, did it?
No, it has been a really nice day today though, hasn't it?
But it's been gorgeous.
Yeah.
It really has. And I've started here really at the vetiver raised bed. We planted one or two things in at the back end of last season. Some have done okay, some haven't. We've had netting over these for probably since last October, haven't we?
Yeah.
And it gives you a really good idea of just how valuable it is to cover your crops. This has been pecked at by some pigeons.
It has.
When I looked out here this morning,
Yeah.
they sat on here. They don't actually go after the spring onions as such. They haven't as yet touched the 2 swede that Mrs. W put in here last year.
I do think that swede though is starting to rise to flower, you know.
You could be right.
I think it is. I looked at it earlier and it's... Yeah, I think it is, isn't it? Shame.
But
The one at the other end is still fine, and the ones in the plot that we put in are all looking good too. So fingers crossed we will get some swede.
Yeah. They are starting to bulb out, so could have some swede this spring. I know that April is here and spring has sprung upon us. It always reminds me of one of Mrs. W's favourite movies. She's a big Star Wars fan. It's a time of new hope. You can see that all these lovely new seedlings that we have, they spring hope for us, for what may be to come during the coming months. But it's also very much a time of renewal. It doesn't seem that long ago that we were here avoiding the thorns and picking a wonderful crop of gooseberries. Indeed, if you look here, it's not going to be long before the new flowers appear and the blossom comes. that will give us this year's harvest. The summer fruiting raspberries, their leaves have all come out. And the autumn fruiting raspberries, their new primer canes have sprouted from the ground. The blackberry once again springs into life. And we look forward to their incredible fruits and amazing harvest during late August. And then the lovely red currant, it's starting to sprout its red leaves. The black currant is ahead of it. And I know that Belinda, you said to me that you've seen so many ladybirds. It's the same here in our Norfolk garden. There are so many. They have managed to find places to overwinter. I guess that because we've had such a mild winter, they've managed to overwinter really well. But that's really great for us gardeners, because that means that they can get to work on the aphids as soon as they arrive, and we don't have to wait for those to arrive. And we've seen so many about it, haven't we, Mrs. W?
We have. When I pruned the hydrangea bushes, the dead heads off the hydrangea bushes last week, there was hundreds. There were hundreds, literally hundreds.
And it's something that we find ourselves doing more and more, is that we leave the pruning as late as we can, especially on the shrubs. They really love being on the shrubs, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
And by doing that, you just give those a chance just to hibernate for as long as they need to, so that they can spring into action and help you in your quest against the pests. April sees the soil temperatures really starting to warm up. They get much better. We see temperatures regularly now during the day of 10 degrees Celsius. And it won't be long before the nighttime temperatures get there. And then things really do take off. We start to see more daylight hours. Although just at the moment, the clocks here in the UK went forward on Saturday. We appear to have that extra hour, because it won't get dark here now until 7:30 tonight, and not 6:30. But by springing that forward, it also means that it's not getting so light in the morning now as it was. But it won't be long before that really stretches out, and we will see so many more hours of daylight that we have to grow our vegetables with. But April, as lovely as it is today, we can still see frosts. There won't be too many for us now, here in our Zone 9A garden. Our last average frost date will happen round about the 14th, 15th of April. But we can still see them. Doesn't mean it's this exact end, it's just normally that's when they do finish. So you'll be a really wise gardener to ensure that you'll always have your fleece handy, just to cover your plants. You can see here I have some over the potatoes that I planted a couple of weeks ago. Bizarrely, this is not actually on here because we're expecting frost. We've got quite good nighttime temperatures at the moment. It's actually here to stop the chickens scraping around it, because we do like to let the chickens come out and enjoy themselves. But equally, we don't want them helping themselves to any of our plants that might be coming up. We sowed our carrots in here right at the very end of March, when we twisted out the Rudolph purple sprouting broccoli. It's not going to be long before they're through now. And I did just fleece them. That's to try and trap some of the soil's warmth so that they germinate, hopefully very quickly. But once they have germinated, they need to be kept covered, either with your fleece or with hoops and mesh. because the carrot root fly shall become active as we get toward the end of April. Once these claret broccoli are finished, and by the way, we've been having some superb harvests of that, haven't we, Mrs.
certainly
W?
have.
I shall take these large hoops down and reduce them down to about the height of what the carrots are going to grow to. They should be twisted out. We already have 2 rows of carrots in here. There'll be another one to see us through the summer months. And then where those claret are, that will be where our main crops, carrots, will grow for us to enjoy later on in the year. Now, my next top tip is to do with broad beans. These are overwintered ones, and if you sowed yours, for argument's sake, in February or even March, they won't be as large as this. But there will come a point, and for us it will probably be towards the end of April. They'll be up here by then, and if you start to get an attack of the aphids, the black fly, just take the tops out. They act like a helipad for them. They can fly in, land on them, and then work their way down to infest your plants. Now, they don't really do huge amounts of damage to the plant. You'll still get crops, but they can sap energy from the plant. It doesn't look nice, and every time you pick them, you've got to clean all the mess off. So if one can avoid having them land on there, it's a good thing to do. Now, here in Mrs. W's stumpery is where we grow our comfrey. The bees have been absolutely loving it in the sunshine today. And comfrey is such a great plant because you can extract its leaves and you can make some really great feed, organic, natural feed that you can use for your plants, especially those that are in the greenhouse, because it's quite high in potash, comfrey is, and serves as a good feed for your tomatoes in particular. Why pay all that money for Tomarite or something when actually you can have a free resource in your garden? And although comfrey has a really deep taproot, which is why it can actually access all those amazing nutrients that we can harvest, it's a really good idea to actually feed your comfrey too and give them a good mulch of your well-rotted compost or manure. As we said earlier, we will have very sunny days in April too, and it gets quite warm. In fact, I can see by our thermometer in here that it actually reached 33.9 degrees Celsius as a maximum in this polytunnel yesterday. It's currently 16.2, but it actually did get down to 0.9 of a degree last night, around about 1 degree Celsius. But actually, if you look at the thermometer in the greenhouse, it reached 34.1 degrees Celsius as a maximum. It's currently 21 in here, but it only got down to 4.5 degrees last night. And it's one of the reasons why myself and Mrs. W, once we find it really convenient to film in the polytunnel when we're sowing things and we do the sow along videos. But then once they've germinated, we tend to leave them here in the greenhouse because the greenhouse is just that bit warmer overnight. But actually my top tip here is that, yes, it is going to get warm. So don't forget to ventilate your undercover growing structures, whether you have a greenhouse or a poly. They do need to be well ventilated so that these plants don't overheat and get scorched. But of course, do keep an eye on the temperatures overnight. If they're due to get down close to freezing, then we most certainly need to be closing those vents back up again. Once we get to April, regardless whether it's this polytunnel or the greenhouse, I always start to ensure that we water at least once a week. During the winter period, sometimes we didn't water in here for 2, sometimes even 3 weeks. because it remained relatively moist and damp in here. You can see I actually came in here, not that was an hour and a half ago, was it, Mrs.
Something
W?
like that, yeah.
And the leaves on these spring greens were starting to wilt. You can see this is here. And I've watered these, they're now starting to recover and pull themselves up once again. So do look out for signs of that in your undercover structures, and if things need watering, then don't forget to give them a water. Don't ignore them. It's getting hot in here, as I said. It was 33.9 degrees Celsius in here yesterday. That's hot. If they were outside in our plots, they wouldn't be getting that warm. And of course their roots would have access to all the water that's in our outside plots. Now, we did say about this, I think, in our November or December top tips, but it still holds true for now. Just do make sure that, you know, you're keeping your gutters clear of all the debris. There will still be some falling. And of course, the one thing we do know about April is we get the April showers. We've been harvesting the water from our butts to ensure that our new seedlings are able to receive nice fresh water since January. So keep these clear and allow the April showers to replenish the water in your water butts. That's our top tips for the month of April. There will be many more, so please do share them down in the comments section. We love to read them, and I know so many of our viewers also like to read them. Now, do have a great rest of your gardening week, won't you? And we shall see you back here in our garden on Sunday.